Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. We're calling it hashtag wars countering weaponization of celebrity endorsements on social media. Over the next 30 minutes, I will, with the help of my special guest, help you understand the import of each of those words or phrases, because if you've been following the news, India has been pushing back against celebrities who commented on social media about an ongoing farmers' protest. Why? Because by doing so, these celebrities have added only more fuel to the fire. To begin with, none of them have any clue about what the issue really is. But they used their celebrity status to foment unrest in India. They cherry pick, they conflate multiple issues to project an image of India that suits their agenda, their narrative. Why aren't we talking about this? A singer and actor wonders aloud on Twitter about the farmers' protest. Well, why just that? Let's talk about how protesters took law into their own hands. Let's talk about men on tractors destroying public property. Let's talk about men brandishing swords and attacking police personnel. Let's talk about destruction of telecommunication towers and CCTVs. Let's talk about how police in New Delhi did not fire a single bullet in the face of grave provocation. Let's talk about vandalization of the Red Fort. Let's talk about desecration of Mahatma Gandhi's statues in the US of A. And let's also talk about new farm laws in India, because correct me if I'm wrong, the issue still is farm laws, unless celebrities have moved on to some other issue. So why shy away from an informed debate on that instead of raving and ranting about internet being blocked? By the way, internet was cut off for security reasons, but it was restored after a few hours. Another self-styled campaigner on Twitter said, I still hashtag stand with farmers and support their peaceful protest. I'm sorry, peaceful? The Red Fort, a symbol of India's struggle for freedom and independence, was vandalized. You call that peaceful? If this was peaceful, are you saying that what happened here in Washington, D.C. was peaceful too? If it was not, well, then why do you have a different yardstick for what happened in the Red Fort? Now, some in India believe that this was all a conspiracy to defame or tarnish India on the world stage, to which I can already hear some foreign celebrities on social media snigger, show us the evidence. But the same show us the evidence brigade believes that a protester who rammed his tractor into a police barricade and died was shot. This in spite of the autopsy report saying that he died of shock and hemorrhage. So the point I'm trying to make here is this. Celebrities, critics, skeptics, and naysayers on social media believe what they want to believe and what they want others to believe. But in doing so, truth becomes a casualty. Eric Swalwell, a Democrat lawmaker from the US state of California, says on Twitter, I quote, India must commit to peace, negotiate with small farmers, restore internet access, and reject discrimination, unquote. What this gentleman does not know or does not care to know is the following. India was, is, and will always remain committed to peace. It's the world's largest democracy. and a raucous democracy at that. A country of more than 1 billion people sees protests, big and small, all the time. So the farmers' protest is neither the first nor the last. And there are systems and processes in place, institutions in place to resolve all such issues. Negotiate with small farmers, he says. Well, India has held at least 11 rounds of talks in the last 2 odd months with small and big farmers. India has also offered to put the laws on hold. But the farmers hold on to their maximalist position. They want these laws, these new laws, to be repealed altogether. So who is being inflexible on this issue? Restore internet access, he says. As I said before, internet was cut off for security reasons, but it was restored after a few hours. Reject discrimination. Let's just say that I don't want to dignify it with a comment. Now, some others used a hashtag that alleged India was committing a genocide. I wonder whether they at all know the meaning of the word genocide. So, to set the record straight and sift fact from fiction, here are some more pointers for you. The US government, headed by a Democrat in President Joe Biden, says, I quote, "In general, the United States welcomes steps that would improve the efficiency of India's markets and attract greater private sector investment," unquote. Not that India is looking for an endorsement from the US, but what it means essentially is that what India proposes to do is nothing unusual. It is only reforming the agriculture sector, nothing more, nothing less. That's not all. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, says, I quote, "These particular farm laws have the potential to raise, in our view, farmers' incomes," unquote. Right, time for a very short break here on this special broadcast. When we come back, I'll have my very special guest join us for a threadbare discussion on these and other issues. Keep watching DD India. Don't go anywhere.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
India.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
माँ हिंदी हस्ती
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast here on DD India, and we're calling it hashtag wars countering weaponization of celebrity endorsements on social media. Right, time to bring in my special guest on this discussion. Professor Vamsi Juluri, who teaches at the University of San Francisco in the US, is with us. Professor, welcome to DD India.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on DD.
Welcome. Now, viewers, this might interest you. Professor Juluri has written 6 books. His first was published in 2003 and the last in 2020, and is working on a 7th titled The Guru Within. Professor Juluri, if I can start with the obvious questions first. Rihanna, Greta Thunberg, Lily Singh, Mia Khalifa, Meena Harris, Susan Sarandon, Rupi Kaur. I mean, Rihanna tweeted, and as if on cue, all the others began tweeting about this farmers' protest. I want to understand from you, why do you think it's happening? Are they plain ignorant, or are they pawns in a larger game being played out here? Also, who could be driving it? Could it be state, non-state actors, or NGOs?
Thank you. Let's look at the big picture first.
Sure.
These celebrity tweets, whether they're well-intentioned or otherwise, are surrounded by several other incidents that we should take seriously too. Right here in California, a statue of Mahatma Gandhi was viciously cut to bits just last week. And what is shocking is not only the incident, but the fact that not one Gandhian scholar or activist or historian that I know of has condemned it even. Okay? Now, there are so many universities right here in California, right here in the Bay Area, and many of them advertise Gandhian ideals, Gandhian programs, conferences on Gandhi. None of them have spoken up about, this horrible attack that has taken place. And we must also remember that many of these people have been using Gandhi as a main point of critique against, Prime Minister Modi and, the ruling party of India for many, many years now. And when something like this, which smears Gandhi, not just, a basic critique of some of his faults, but a huge violent smear, nobody has condemned it. So there is that incident. Now, some more coming. Well, the most relevant one here to, I think, the whole celebrity tweet issue, a symbol of modern democratic India, like the Indian flag, came under siege on Republic Day. Hundreds of policemen violently attacked. And even that is not all, when you think about it. Okay? Just a few days before that, in my ancestral state of Andhra Pradesh, someone cut off the head of a Vigraham of Sri Rama himself and threw it in a lake. There have been hundreds of incidents of desecration of temples and dozens of violent attacks on Hindu priests and sadhus. Now, who are the people who most uphold the sanctity of these sacred traditions in India? Is it the elites of Delhi and Bombay and London, New York, Washington? No. Is it not the people of the villages, the farmers, their elders, their children, for whom all of this is sacred? Has any celebrity tweeted about this vicious warfare on the culture of these farmers, their holy men, and even their lives? See, the big picture is simply this. The social media circus that we are seeing is just one face of a resurgent right-wing monotheistic intolerance against indigenous pluralisms. It also marks a wholesale capture by such forces of what used to be, very idealistic, liberal or progressive issues. And even the progressive celebrities like Susan Sarandon and others are just now going along with it. So if Western media are saying farmers today without respect for details and facts, okay, that is a key issue. To me, it seems little different from 15, 17 years ago when they were saying freedom, when they were saying democracy, and then they took their whole war machine saying freedom and democracy to go and bomb Iraq. So naturally, when people with such a dirty track record of lies and wars against other countries, go around chanting slogans without a truth, without a bit of truth or conscience, they will be challenged.
Absolutely. Now, Professor, you are also researching on how the US media covers issues of countries such as India. So from that vantage, from that perspective, I want to ask you another question. Now, there is no doubt an inherent bias in the foreign news coverage of India and all things India. Now, it's taken on a sinister dimension on the propaganda against India over farmers' protest in particular. But for a change, India has been quick to rebut, and I'm quoting the Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson here. He says, before rushing to comment on such matters, we would urge that the facts be ascertained and a proper understanding of the issues at hand be undertaken. The temptation of sensationalist social media hashtags and comments, especially when resorted to by celebrities and others, is neither accurate nor responsible, unquote. So media can build a certain perception, propagate a myth or narrative, or even peddle an agenda.
Yeah, I think the Ministry of External Affairs was right to issue a statement this time. This is long overdue, and I hope it will help start a debate, that can take us beyond all this, social media hysteria and competing slogans and so on. Okay, so let me remind your viewers at this point in India that, there is one dismal ground reality we face around the world, I'm sure, and I can see it particularly here in America. Now, as far as India's image in the popular American mind goes, as we see it every day, and I've interacted with thousands of students, in the 20 years I have been teaching over here. There are two different things going on. One, at the everyday level, there is a certain amount of goodwill, for India and for Indians, whether it's Gandhi or yoga or doctors and teachers and so on, all that is good. But the understanding of India and India's politics that most people have here is stuck at whatever propaganda campaign was sort of stepped up. There is very little alternative information, not even opinion, information that the mainstream Americans have about India. Okay, so there is no Indian news platform of any scale or size here that challenges the one-sided story they're getting. And I'm going to be a little harsh here, from a handful of Raj era type white righteous experts and their colonized brown Gangadin collaborators. This is the reality. Okay, it's been going on for a long time, and even with CAA, a couple of years ago, these experts were outright lying. They were going around saying CAA was going to strip Indian Muslims of citizenship. And while they were saying this, Sikhs in Afghanistan were getting blown up by jihadists there. Hindus were being massacred in Pakistan. Okay? So it was a refugee bill. It was so modest in its scope, and yet it was being lied about so much without any challenge. So this time, I would say the MEA statement is welcome. It's reasonable. It's a good first step. But I also want to add, a few nuances to what is going on from my perspective as a communications teacher. See, there's a real risk, I think, given the nature of social media, that all this, weaponized celebrity tweeting will be met by just some loose social media drama, from outraged patriots and others. And then nothing more will come of it. There'll be a storm of hashtags, and then it'll die out. So that is not how this should take place. Now that the MEA has actually confronted, these propagandists and is calling for a debate, I think there are questionable political and financial links, that seem to be playing out here. And that is very, very concerning, given the long history of terrorism that our country has faced. So that, I think the authorities are right to investigate. But, I would say everyone should focus on the facts.
Professor, now there are some concerns about big tech and weaponization of social media. Now, how does new media fit into these broader concerns about the history of propaganda, for instance? Also, what does your own research into Hindu phobia in the media have to say about all of this?
So I have to admit that my field of media studies is also at somewhat of a crossroads. Okay? The technology is changing so quickly, and the scale and the scope is so complicated. The field of media studies, which used to be concerned primarily with propaganda for almost 40, 50 years, and then it broadened the scope. It used to talk about cultural imperialism, which was such an important issue. Then it started talking about representation. Now, the last 10 years or so, it's largely talking about the issue of populism, and then, of course, this thing called fake news. Okay? So the concerns right now about social media and these big media corporations tend to revolve around privacy, surveillance, fake news, manipulation, all this stuff. Now, in the US, the interesting thing is both sides accuse the other of fake news. President Trump used to do it. He used to say CNN and all are fake news. And then the Democrats, and then most of the media and the academic institutions now, in turn, accuse the Trump supporters of circulating fake news. So the problem here, I think, is that the conversation about media hasn't been fully honest. The propaganda of one side, typically the propaganda of the right-wing side in any country, is very easy to spot as propaganda and critique. Now, the propaganda on the other side is also there. And once upon a time, the professional world, the academia used to be very self-reflexive about it. Now that is reduced. So we need to be critical of both sides. One example I just want to mention, there's a documentary, for example, called The Social Dilemma. It's made by a public interest group right here out of Silicon Valley. And it warns us about how social media, is altering behavior. It's causing mental distress, political polarization, all this stuff. So it's a good start. But then when you watch the documentary carefully, you see it's highly biased. Okay, it's clearly biased. So, and we are seeing that bias playing out in real life too, right? I mean, the way the social media giants are unilaterally deciding what news is fake, what messages, have to be censored with warning, messages or even bans. And then the way they are anointing only some organizations as fact checkers. So these are all things every citizen of every democracy, should be concerned about today. Now, coming to my own research, I have been studying the codes used by Western media for representing India very closely for many years. Mm-hmm. I use the term Hinduphobia here for these codes because that is the historical phenomenon, we need to name. So there are other religious communities in South Asia and in India which also face misrepresentation from media, but that has already been called out. I mean, the concept of Islamophobia is highly studied in American academia, and that is good. Wherever there's bias or misrepresentation, it's good to call it out. So Islamophobia has been talked about. Hinduphobia is somewhat of a less understood concept, frankly, because the misunderstanding and confusion about it has itself, been weaponized. So I'll give you one example. Just a couple of days ago, Vice President Kamala Harris's niece, Meena Harris, who's also part of this Twitter hashtag war, I guess, was asked about Hinduphobia, that many of the things she was saying might be, seen as coming from Hinduphobic misperceptions. And she kind of just shrugged it off and said, she's a Hindu and everything else is like, you question it, it's fascism or some such, trite remark she made. Now, the problem is a lot of people who are Hinduphobic, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but are in denial that Hinduphobia is real. Mm-hmm. And conversely, even some of the people who are saying such a thing as Hinduphobia exists don't have the scholarly tools yet to talk about it. There is a common misperception that Hinduphobia is a term that was coined like in the 1990s, by Hindu right-wingers, to canvas for BJP or something like that. But here's the actual facts. The oldest record of the term Hinduphobia goes back to colonial times, 1883. Okay. And 1910, 1920, it was used as a criticism of British imperial religious racism against India by even someone like Sardar Patel. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this term has a very long and distinguished history as anti-colonial indigenous resistance. Okay. So I have just published a chapter talking about some of the scholarly methods we could use to research Hinduphobia. I'll leave those links on my Twitter bio or somewhere where your viewers can hopefully find them. But the main points I just want to mention here, if you study the media discourse on India objectively, you will find a ton of evidence for bias, misreporting, racist stereotyping, and most of all, even outright warlike demonization and dehumanization.
Absolutely. And finally, Professor Jaluri, if social media is here to stay for the near term, for the foreseeable future, how should democracies such as India handle communication and education differently going forward?
All right. So I think India needs to get its act together very, very quickly on this. So these WhatsApp forwards and the so-called befitting reply business on Twitter, they don't count. Concretely, we need two things. One, India needs to really start paying attention to the issue of information and even education sovereignty. If your children are being taught about history, politics, and even their identity by foreign corporations like Disney, Amazon, or Netflix, we are well on our way to becoming a colony once again. So I must emphasize, I'm not calling for censorship, but I think in a sovereign country, access to a nation's consumers should be a privilege earned by foreign companies. It is only in colonialism that foreign companies feel entitled to grab, a market without showing consumers or their gods or their traditions even a bit of respect. Two, we need a proper global media platform run by professionals. The time is right for it. I saw, a mood like this in America once before too. I must share that. Just after the WMD lies about Iraq got exposed, okay, around 2004, 2005, young people in America welcomed Al Jazeera News only because they felt they had been lied to by their own media, by their, Fox News, New York Times, CNN, everybody. So they wanted a new perspective, from the world. So right now, I think we should remember it's not just the Indians who are feeling concerned about the growing power of big media corporations and their psyops. People everywhere are looking for deep honesty, okay, in the public sphere. And that's why in America, I have to mention, they're looking towards someone like former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who has a small base, but a very strong and loyal one. And the important thing is, it includes both the left and the right in America. Okay? And of course, she has also faced a lot of lies, censorship, smear campaigns and so on. So people are sick of being lied to in America, just as people are sick of being lied about in India. Okay? So the most important thing, again, I think a professional global media initiative from India right now, it can achieve something very, very big for the whole world. So just like how Indian scientists have put everything into making a vaccine for COVID, we should also put our best talents right now into making a vaccine for propaganda, a vaccine against asatya. So let me end just by saying, Satyameva Jayate.
Great. On that optimistic note, Professor, thank you so much for making time for us here on DD India. Appreciate it. And that's a wrap, but news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.